said we'd start at 6:45. There's plenty of food. If you want to go grab something more to eat while you're listening, feel free to do that now. We are going to start out with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Nick, I believe, is going to lead us in prayer.
You bow your heads and your hearts. Lord Jesus, I want to thank you for the opportunity for us to be here today. Lord, I ask that your Holy Spirit would guide us as we go about speaking to one another, building community, ultimately that we keep our eyes focused on that which you'd have our eyes focused on, the task of your kingdom. And Lord, be with everybody here as they go home tonight, that you be with them for safety, and bless each and every one of us. And Lord, all glory to you. We pray this in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. And I'm just going to quick, before I introduce our supervisor candidates, one of the things that I live by is my Bible right here. It's the thing I live by. I happen to have my daughters that I commandeered her Bible because I like the little side comments in her Bible. But I opened it up just a minute ago, and it says, "To you I call, O Lord, my rock. Do not turn a deaf ear to me, for if you remain silent, I will be like those who have gone down to the pit. Hear my cry for mercy as I call to you for help, as I lift up my hands towards your most holy place." And then further on it says, "Save your people and bless your inheritance. Be their shepherd and carry them forever." And I believe one of the reasons we are here today is because our country is in desperate need. We need to cry unto the Lord because our country, we don't want to lose our country, and we need God to help us save our country. With no further ado, I will introduce, we will start with Brian Rife. He is a candidate for county supervisor. Brian's from Mondayman, and I will let Brian tell you more about himself and go from there.
That doesn't fit in there. Like Rebecca said, I'm Brian Rife. I'm from Mondayman. I served for 6 years on Mondayman City Council, 6 years as mayor of Mondayman. I am currently the fire chief in Mondayman. I'm on my second term of that. One of my goals when I'm done serving any office is to be able to look the people in the eye. If you can't look the people in the eye, you didn't do the right thing. You might not agree with everybody, but we need to be able to look each other in the eye and say, we did the best we can. First and foremost with that, I'm a Christian. I always vote and make my decisions with what's pleasing in the eyes of the Lord.
Amen.
If we can't do that, we shouldn't be holding public office. Some of the things I want to see done at the supervisor level is a county attorney. That's an elected position, so we're kind of limited until we get a candidate to run, a Republican candidate. What can we do to control that office? One of the things we need to do is cut the rent. We should not be paying rent as taxpayers in Harrison County on a building that she owns and is running a private practice out of. We also shouldn't be paying the utilities on that building. So let's make those cuts. There's offices over here in the courthouse that she can work and do her county work out of. She could be also accessible to the public by working in the courthouse. Nobody should have to go into her private practice to deal with county business. Another thing we need to do is work on employee morale in the county. I think we all know there's an issue there. We've lost 4 good employees here recently because of the morale. There's 2 people in this county that are causing that problem. I know we want an investigation into it, but I think everybody knows what the problem is. So one way to fix that, I want to meet with every employee. If I spend 15 to 20 minutes with every employee and build a relationship with them, I think we can help boost that morale. maybe keep some employees around, figure out what their problems are and deal with their problems. Let's address the issues that they and concerns they have. I think with doing that also, we can cut the union out. There's 2 employees right now that are part of the union for county roads. The only reason they have that union still here is because they don't trust their leadership. So we need to give them leadership they can trust. I will do that. We also need to vote the will of the people, not what we think is best. What do you guys want? That's what we need to do as representatives. We're representing you. We're not representing any special interest or our big ideas. What do the people want? A lot of what I hear is election. We want to look into our elections. Let's look into them. Why are we hiring an IT person with no IT experience inside the auditor's office? That's where the election problems are happening, is in that auditor's office. So let's get an outside set of eyes looking in. County engineer. This one, the people are kind of split half and half. I think we need to share an engineer. I think that would be a great way to cut in the county and put money back in the taxpayer pockets. There are 8 counties in the state of Iowa that share engineers with one other county, and it works really well. One of the benefits that you can do with that is share personnel in the offices and be able to engineer projects ourselves instead of hiring outside sources to engineer our projects. By saving that money, I think we can also take some of it and put towards blading roads in the winter. Right now, there's some kind of mentality in county roads that we can only blade Monday through Friday. If it snows Saturday, it ain't getting bladed. And that is a public safety issue, in my opinion. We've got to get the roads cleaned, and I think we'll get longer life out of our roads by getting that snow moved off of there. I also think we need a board secretary. I don't think the auditor should be doing that secretary work. We need somebody to do the agenda and the minutes and get the minutes out on time. That's where we're going to see transparency with the people. You guys want to see what's actually happening in real time. You don't want to see about it 3 or 4 months later. You want to see it now. And I think that's also going to cut some of the power struggle that's happening in the courthouse right now. Get a board secretary that does that work, and we don't have to rely on the auditor to control everything. I think that's all I have. That's all I have on my notes. I'll be around if anybody has questions.
Okay, it is on. My name is Nick Anderson, and I'm also running for Harrison County Supervisor. I agree with pretty much most everything Brian's saying. Now, there are 2 seats that are going to be open, and I'm doing something wrong here. Oh, you can't hear me. Okay, I need it closer to my mouth. All right, I'm dangerous with the microphone. My debut record is dropping Monday. Pick it up. No, I'm kidding. So, I guess a little bit about me. I've never been in politics, never really cared to. I am getting involved now because I'm not happy with a lot of the things that I see. And I've noticed that a lot of people share some of the same convictions that I have with regard to the way things ought to be versus how they are currently. Now, one of the biggest deals to me is transparency. If right now, as it stands now, you can't hardly get the meeting minutes, right? So you can't really put your eyes on what the heck is going on. You got to rely on somebody else who can make it to the meetings and to tell you what's up. Unless you want to know news from months ago, you're not getting that. And so that's a legal requirement that's kind of getting skirted and being forgotten about here. But we got to get. That's the first basic step in transparency, is getting the meeting minutes out to everybody. All right. Also, I firmly believe that if anybody wants to attend these meetings, they should be accessible. So I believe that the meetings need to be moved to a time where people that have working lives, they work a regular job, can go if they want to, okay? Ideally, we want the county supervisor meetings to be boring. So you don't want to go because you get bored to death, but that's how you want it, right? So that's my goal, is to make it boring again, right? But nevertheless, in the meantime, we need a better transparency than what we have now. Right now, we got, you show up at 9 in the morning, but if you gotta go to work, you ain't there. So guess what? Most of you ain't there, you know? And I'm very grateful for the people that have been able to make it. A lot of the ladies that, you know, Mrs. Blackford, you know, Rebecca's been able to make it, you know, Renee, really respect you being able to be there and share with us what's going on in real time. But, so while, yes, it is my goal to make it boring there, once again, there's a couple things that I want to share beyond transparency that are important to me. The first thing that really piqued my interest in looking into doing this was simply when they issued a countywide mask mandate. That was the very first thing that really got me going, whoa, what's going on? Because, not to give a lecture on this, but being born as a human being made in the image of God, you have certain rights that are intrinsic to you that cannot be taken from you. They can be disrespected, right? So powerful people may disrespect your rights and punch you right in the face if they want. And if you're not strong enough to beat them up, then I guess they can do it all day long. But ultimately, it doesn't make it right. So there are certain rights that you have because you're a human being that, you know, for example, if we have any rights at all, we would have the right to first be alive, because if you can't be alive, then you can't exercise any of the other rights, right? So that's a given. But if you have the right to be alive, you also have the right to freely breathe ambient air. And if you think about that for more than 30 seconds, you can't come to any other conclusion than that. You have the right to freely breathe ambient air. If you believe in a mask mandate, you would have to disagree with that statement. Now let that sink in for a moment. What right do I have to regulate your breathing? I don't. Even if smallpox was resurrected, if I was scared, it's incumbent upon me to put on a suit, self-contained breathing apparatus, if I want to go out in public and I'm not scared. But I can't do it to you. If you want to take the risk, you're a human being. You're your own person. I don't own you. You understand? Ultimately, I don't own you. God does. You're accountable to him, not me, not to the government. The government doesn't owe you either. So ultimately, that was the very first thing that got me looking at this, and there's a lot of things I wasn't liking when I was looking at what's going on here locally with Harrison County. And Brian did a good job bringing up a lot of those things, but that's where I'm at. Now, the second thing was, just because there was a mask mandate, and that's probably not, you know, on the table now, which is great, we don't know what's around the corner next, okay? So what if, for all I know, there could be something, there's a chikungunya disease, guys, and if you don't place a bag of okra in your left hand when you're on, you know, see what I'm saying? Now, that may be coming. Now, if that's the case, if they decide that there's you know what, in order to safely do business in Harrison County, gosh dang it, you know, we really should have like some paperwork showing that you've taken the appropriate steps to protect the public, you know, like a vaccine proof or something like that. If our health department were to recommend that, which they seem to recommend anything that the media says to recommend, we already know what's going to happen. The very same thing is going to happen then that happened in the past, and that is they're going to the board that we have now is going to say, well, okay, the health department said to do that, so you got to wash our hands of it. You know, it is what it is. So when something worse comes down the pipe that would cause them to, you know, a little heat if they were to stand up, well, heck, they didn't do it the first time. They're not going to do it the second time, especially if the heat's worse. And so if they're going to buckle under pressure to say, you know what, I'm not going to protect your fundamental basic human rights because, I don't know, it's not very comfortable to do that in this climate right now. They're not going to do it in the future either, guys. And that brings me to the final point about me, and that is, there's an old idea in Christian theology about the doctrine of the lesser magistrates, okay? This idea is that, look, when we think of government, or, you know, we think of president, we think of the Senate, we think of, you know, the big dogs, right? Well, there's layers to this whole thing, right? So this onion's got a lot of layers, and the position I'm running for is one of the lower layers, right? Now, one thing that I can do and I would be more than willing to do, that I'm mad enough to run, is to stand up when bad things start rolling downhill and it's expected of us to embrace that and push that on you. I will stand up and do what's called interpose. Interposition is when you stand in between the people and the bad idea of rulers. There's some really good examples of this. One that happened very recently was in Illinois. I believe Illinois has 99 counties. The governor of Illinois, hard leftist, said, you know what? Nobody's gonna open their business in Illinois until I say so. And if you do it before that, we'll arrest you, okay? Well, there was one county, and it was just on the other side of St. Louis, it was on the western side of the state, that stood up and said, you know what? Those county supervisors said, no, we're not gonna do that. In our county, it's legal to open your business if you want to. If people choose to go there, that's their right to do. I mean, this is basic Americanism, right? And the governor heard about this, and he comes out and he bares his teeth. He's like, oh, how dare you? And he shows his true colors to the entire public for all to see. That you do this, we'll have you jailed. You do this, we're gonna bring up all this lawfare, all these things, ridiculous things. And that county never backed down. That board didn't back down. They stood up even when it wasn't comfortable, stood there and said no. And they made the tyrant bare his fangs so that their neighbors could see, okay? Now, when that happened, a couple weeks later, after this has, been going on, the Illinois State Police came out and said, yeah, on second thought, we're not gonna enforce this. Now, if it wasn't for that one county, all of Illinois, because the other 98 counties went like this. Okay, we'll do what you say. One stood up and said, no, we're not doing it. State police says, ooh, do I really, really want to throw these guys in the clink, elected officials? Nah, we won't. And once that occurred, Illinois was free again. But that's interposition. That's where you stand between the tyrant and the people. That's what I would do, because, oh my gosh, I would, if I had a chance to stand in front of a tyrant that bears his fangs against the people, I would be racing to the front line, buying a ticket, right? That's me, that's just my nature. So, no, I welcome that. I mean, not that I want to see it happen, but if it does, I want to be there. I want to be the one to go, you sling the arrows at me, because my goodness. But that's me. Now, that's enough about me, and this is, that's why I'm running, the issues that we laid out here. Again, I fully agree with the things of we need a fresh set of eyes on tax allocations, because the more and more I looked into this, the more and more I'm like, this is not good either. So, but that's what I want to do. Ultimately, I want to thank Rebecca for bringing us together here today. Rebecca is running, and I'll let her talk for herself, but I do want to say something about Rebecca too, that I support Rebecca in her run for the House, because much of what I don't like, you've all heard the maxim that, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. I don't think that Matt is a bad person in and of himself. That's not what this is about. But what I do believe is that over time, you get corroded a little bit. And based on what I've heard him say with regard to the ethanol stuff, being in the gasoline and imposing these on some of the smaller places, in the other talks I've heard, he stands on these certain principles, but if the conditions are right, he's willing to violate those principles, because it works. It works for him. And that's something I don't like to see. And I don't think that he was always that way, but he may be becoming that way, and that's what I fear. Rebecca has my interest, your interest, our interest at heart. And I think that, a person who's oriented correctly, I'll take them over somebody who has maybe more political knowledge or more knowledge or more experience in the realm of law or something. I don't care as much about that. I really don't. So I want to thank Rebecca for doing this and bringing us together. And ultimately, guys, as we leave here, I don't want anyone to think that the full solution to the problems that we face today are going to be solved in the political realm. They won't be. I want you to think very strongly about what can you do to get to know your neighbor a little better. It's the last thing I'm gonna share. I swear I'll be out of here. But my wife and I, okay, what should we do? I'm good at criticizing, but I'm not really that great at solving the problems I can point at. And I noticed that our house, outside of family, it really doesn't have a lot of people in it. And so, all right, so we decided, okay, on Sundays, let's find one person or one couple at church and invite them for lunch on Sundays. Now, we've been very successful with doing that, except for 2 of the last 3 weeks we haven't, because things were legit busy, I promise. But otherwise, this is a simple step that we took to say, okay, what can we do to change what we don't like to see? A lot of us don't know our neighbors as well as we need to, and listen, if we are going to make any positive change, it starts at home. And so get to know your neighbors, even the weird ones, right? Invite them over, they might be all right. But do that, because if freedom starts at home, right? Building the kingdom of God starts at home. It all starts at home. It doesn't come downhill. That's the bad stuff comes from on high normally, okay? The good stuff comes from the bottom up. So let's get to know your neighbors. Because all of these problems that we're all good at pointing out aren't going to be solved by people in suits and ties passing votes, okay? I think we should try that angle, and we should do the best that we can there. Make no mistake about it. But the bottom line is, the goodness of this nation rests on you, your shoulders, our shoulders, okay? And that starts at home and works upward. And so, while I'd love to see a revival, the way we can start that is get to know your neighbors and start building good, strong community with one another. All right? Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. And what Nick's talking about is how I ended up running for office in the first place. How soon we forget why we are here. In 2019, 2020, when COVID hit, and the mask mandates and all the mandates, and our county supervisors decided we needed a mask mandate. That kind of got us started, a group of us started, and that's how I started looking at why I started looking into, the local politics and what was going on. And I could tell it wasn't right, this group, but I won't go into that more, but that's what got me started. And I wasn't sure if I should run for county supervisor, and we prayed about it a lot, and it just wasn't in the cards, and wasn't in, I shouldn't say cards because I don't believe in the cards. It wasn't, that's not what God wanted me to do. And then Nick and Brian stepped forward and said they were gonna run for supervisor, and I had been going down to Des Moines to help. I was asked to be on the Citizen Legislative Task Force to write the Medical Privacy and Freedom Bill. And I went to Des Moines, and it's not maybe as bad as DC, but Des Moines is not pretty. And so we wrote the Medical Privacy and Freedom Bill way back in September of last year. And for some reason, they just can't seem to get it through. And then they wanted to water it down. And when I wouldn't compromise, there was an article in the paper about people that won't compromise. But I will not compromise with Iowans' freedoms. That is one thing I will not compromise. I stand strong on the Second Amendment, but I stand super strong on the Second Amendment, but if they can tell you have to have a shot that might kill you, or they can tell you that you have to wear a mask, or that you can't go in to see your family in the hospital that's possibly dying, Second Amendment's not going to do you a whole lot of good. Unless you're going to take your gun and try to get into the hospital. Don't get me wrong, I believe in the Second Amendment, but I also believe in all the other freedoms too. And that's what basically started me down the road to run for representative. I felt that that's what God wanted me to do. I'm tired of the status quo. I'm tired of people who have the most money deciding what's best for us back here. I'm tired of big pharma, big business telling us what's best for us. Our legislators, their first and foremost job is to uphold the Constitution. And Mr. Goodrich helped remind me of that, because when he asked me that question, what's your first most important thing if you go down to Des Moines? What's the most important thing that you're supposed to do? And I said, well, listen to my constituents. And he said, no. The first and most important thing you do is uphold the Constitution. Because if my constituents come to me with something that's maybe, a large portion of them want something, if it goes against the Constitution, I won't vote for it. I will not vote for it. And one of the things that I've been doing since we started the group back when COVID started and I started going to supervisor meetings is I started speaking out. I started writing letters to the editor, speaking out. I am not afraid to speak out when I see something that's going wrong. And I can talk, if you want to talk privately about the things that I've stood up against in my life, I can tell you about that. We won't get into that right now. But I am going to stand on my principles. I answer to God first, and always. And then I answer to my husband, and then I answer to the people. And so I am not afraid to speak up. There are things that are tough. It's not easy down in Des Moines. I've seen representatives that believe like I do, and it's not pretty when they speak out. But that's what we're supposed to do. I'm tired, and I think all of you are too, or you wouldn't be here tonight. We're tired of our representatives going down to Des Moines and just going along with what Big Pharma wants or big business and giving us excuses. Well, we didn't have 51 votes. Well, get 51 votes. You tell me that when I've had a representative tell me if I want 51 votes, I can get 51 votes. But then the next time I brought the medical privacy and freedom to that representative, he said, well, I can't get the votes for it. I just can't get the votes. And that's one of the things that right now, they will not bring a vote to the floor of the House unless they have 51 votes, unless they know it's going to pass. They go into caucus, and what happens in caucus stays in caucus. It's kind of like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And it's not right. And they say, well, that's the way we've always done it. But the constituents back home don't know how their representative is voting. They don't know how any of the representatives vote or are going to vote. Because in caucus, what they do is they do a mock vote. And so they know how people are going to vote, how their fellow representatives are going to vote, but they don't let that come out of caucus. And they say, that's the way we've always done it. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm tired of doing it the way you've always done it. Right. How can we call the representatives and let them know that how we want them to vote, or even just call them and ask them, why do you feel this way? I need to know what are your thoughts? Is there something I don't know that, but we can't do that. Because also the other thing that people don't realize is how important all the representatives in Iowa. You can call any representative in Iowa. You don't have to just call your representative. You can call the other ones and say, the fact that you won't vote for medical privacy and freedom, it's affecting me here in Western Iowa. Would you, and give them your thoughts, because it affects all of us. So that's just one of the things that I have issues with. I want transparency down in Des Moines, and I want to work for transparency. The chemical abortion bill that Representative Shipley tried to bring to the floor, and they wouldn't vote on it. They wouldn't vote to pass the bill. It was a chemical abortion ban for abort-efficient drugs, and those abort-efficient drugs are solely used to abort babies. They're obviously lethal to babies. They're harmful to the mother. RU 48, RU 486, that's all it's used for. And there were only 2 representatives that voted that tried to get that bill to the floor. I won't go into the procedure, it's a little complicated, but the rest of them, my opponent included, voted against that amendment. Their excuse was it'll go into litigation. We won't be able to get it through. Why are we not letting legislation go through because we're afraid of litigation? We're letting the courts rule how we legislate. That's not how it's supposed to work. The Religious Freedom Bill that was brought to the floor. The Religious Freedom Bill basically put businesses equal with churches. Churches were equal with businesses. So it said that if you are going to shut down churches, you can't shut down churches unless you shut down businesses. Wait a minute. You can't shut down churches. The First Amendment says you can't shut down churches. So why would we put into legislation that they're equal with businesses? Not to mention the fact that the government has no right to shut down businesses in the first place. But my opponent voted for that bill. Thankfully, it didn't make it out of the Senate. But we have to stop voting the way big business because as we all know, Walmart stayed open, but we shut down churches. It's got to stop. It's got to stop somewhere. The latest one is school choice. And I'm not sure, different people feel different ways on that because some of the teachers don't want school choice. I am okay with school choice. In Western Iowa, some of our schools have minor problems, but compared to the big urban areas, Western Iowa doesn't have too bad of schools. And people say, well, the money should, well, we won't talk about West Harris. But for the most part, we have good schools. The money should follow the student. And if you read the bill, it actually only can go to accredited public schools. So for the most part, homeschoolers aren't going to be able to get the money, and non-accredited private schools aren't going to be able to get the money. So, and typically homeschoolers don't want it. Like when I homeschool, I don't want the government to say what I can do with my kids. So I don't want the money anyway. But what we have is the reverse effect from what I said, how Des Moines affects us. Well, I think there's a lot of schools in Des Moines, in the urban areas, that they need school choice so that those kids whose parents can't homeschool them or can't send them to a non-accredited private school, they need to be able to send those kids to a different school. And so I am for school choice, but my point here is they are sitting there holding this bill. Session hasn't completely ended because they can't make a decision on school choice. And so I say, okay, I don't care if you want school choice or don't want school choice, make a decision and get session over. And that falls on leadership. Leadership needs to be able to work together, and they're not. They're not getting it done. And there are so many bills this year that there's excuses. You ask them, what did you do with this? What did you do with that? Excuses, excuses, excuses. I'm tired, I don't know about you, but when my kids came to me with excuses, I would tell them, find a solution. Don't give me an excuse. Find a solution. Because if you're leadership, you need to find a solution. And that's one of the reasons I'm running. I'm not a polished politician, so I have to go by my notes. And one of the main things I say is, Iowa's motto is, our liberties we prize, our rights we will maintain. It is not, our liberties we prize, our rights we will bargain with lobbyists, big pharma, and big business. Just a little bit of a backup, just so that you guys know, I didn't go into it because I think most of you know me. Gary, my husband, and I, we have been married almost 34 years. I have lived in Iowa. I was 10 when he married me. No, I was actually 18 plus 2 days. We had to wait for 2 days because my birthday was on the 24th, and we had to wait till after Christmas because I had to be 18, and then my mom still had to sign the papers. We're still married, so. And we homeschooled our children. My daughter went to Logan here for was supposed to be her junior year, ended up being her senior year, and she went on to college. She graduated with agronomy, and my other daughter is a nurse, and she's going to be a nurse practitioner here soon. We have 4 grandchildren, another one on the way, so we're going to have 5. And I homeschool my children, and then I waitressed for quite a few years, Gurney's, Fernando's, Nick's, and then I worked as a vet tech in Blair for Dr. Black for a couple years. And then my mom had a stroke, and so I retired. I call it retired at 46, and moved my mom down here from Minnesota. And then, of course, I was having grandkids at that time. My oldest grandchild is 6 today. Her birthday is today. And so I started helping my daughter and taking care of my mom. And then I think I've been busier since I, quote, retired than I was when I actually worked Monday through Friday. But that's just a little bit about me. Most of you know that. My most important thing in my life is, like I already said, I answer to God, and then I go by the Constitution. As you can see, it's a little bit worn because I'm not real good at memory anymore, so I have to actually look it up sometimes. And I've always been a conservative. I've always been a Republican. But just when this whole COVID thing started, I was just like, I don't want to leave the Republican Party. Why should I have to leave the Republican Party? I want to stay in the Republican Party and make a difference, And so that's what I'm doing. There are a lot more things that I want to do when I go down to Des Moines. I'm a realist. There are quite a few conservatives. There are actually 10 others that are running for House seats down in Des Moines that I would call true Christian conservatives. And our hope is that we can get us all in. But we're also realistic, but we all know that we have to work a lot harder than the other people that have been there and that are part of the status quo. We have to work harder, our grassroots. And that's why I really appreciate you all coming tonight. Just the realities of it, it's not cheap to run for office when you're running against the House Majority Leader, especially. I don't have all the money that they have coming in, but I appreciate you guys coming. I appreciate your donations. What I need most is to help me get the word out. Don't be afraid to take my palm cards, give them to your friends, your neighbors, tell them about me, tell them about what I stand for. Most of you, I think, have my number. I'm more than willing to talk to people. If you want my yard signs, put my sign in your yard. Most of you, I think, already have. Those of you that live where people will see it. And don't be afraid to call me up, and I love it when people ask me questions. The school choice thing, I wasn't sure about school choice, and I had someone that I brought a yard sign to ask me about school choice, and I said, I need to do some more research on this, and so I did. That's what I did. I don't know it all. I have a lot to learn, but I just want to let God guide me and do the best that I can. I'm going to open it up because I I don't want just me to talk. I want you guys to ask questions of myself and Nick and Brian if they're willing to answer questions. So if anybody has any questions, or if you have something else you just want me to talk about my views on, raise your hand and let me know what it is you want to hear about. Kevin?
I need to understand a little bit more about school choice, because I know in Harrison County area, I know there's kids that are going to Logan, for instance, that are outside that school district. And the tax dollars do follow them. So what's the difference between what's going on now in school choice?
Well, the school choice, you're right. The money does, tax dollars do follow the student now. This is a scholarship program because there's different levels of money. There's state education funds, and then there's money we get from the federal government that our state gets from the federal government for education. So it has to do with that. I don't know exactly how it works, Kevin, but I do know that it's they're gonna only do 5,000 students, and they call them, it's not actually, school choice is a broad term, but it's going to be like an educational savings account where they put the money, like right now, the tax dollars just automatically go to the school that the student open enrolled to. But with the school choice, it will be, there's 5,000 regular students, and then there's 5,000 students that are on IEPs, and they will have to apply, and then the money will be given to whatever school they go to. Typically, they're thinking that it's like private schools. See, now the money goes automatically because those are public schools still. They're still going to another public school. So the school choice would be like a private school, because when you take your kid out of public school and move them over to a private school, the money doesn't follow them right now. So that's more what it would be, is the money that would typically go to the public school can go to a private school. Yeah. Gary?
I have a question for both of our supervisor candidates. Do they see any way to either trim the power or cut the budget on our county health board so we don't have a non-qualified person in the health service for us?
There are, as I was looking into this, I learned that there, by law, state law, every county in Iowa must have a board of health, okay? And there's 5 positions that must be staffed, but it doesn't say how much. I have to look again, but I'm pretty confident it said nothing about the pay rate or total number. So the minimum is 5, so it doesn't say you gotta, currently, I have to look again, but I believe we're paying, I'm gonna be ballparking this here, so don't hold me to it too close. So it's in the $80,000s of dollars for Brad Brake, who is a lawyer from Omaha that, why he's working in Harrison County, I don't know, but he's making 80-some odd thousand a year, and we have more than 5 positions currently in the health department. So what I would do is trim it to the minimum, which is 5, and as far as salaries go, that is absurd. Think about it for a moment. Go, well, you got people who need to make a living. Hold on. Why do we have a health department in the first place? Think about it really. 99.9% of your life is spent without their involvement at all, and you're just fine. Okay? For thousands of years, we went without health departments, we were just fine. Now, I'm not saying I'm gonna go kill the health department. I couldn't do it even if I wanted to. So they're safe. But guess what? Hey, don't go put your food in the sewer. Okay, that's a bad idea, right? We get that. We understand that. They're not doing any groundbreaking research that's going to help us develop better responses for new ways to prepare things, restore things. No, that's not happening, guys. But these are positions that do what exactly? Think of it. Well, we need to pay them all this money to tell us not to eat poop, and do things like this. I get it. What I would do, and I'll let Brian speak, cut them down to the legal 5, and then pay them as as far as I'm concerned, unless there's, this is where I'd have to say, okay, what exactly are your goals? What are we doing? Why are we doing this? But, cut the pay down to something that's negligible, so that's,
So this attorney, does he have a practice in Omaha and makes 80,000 beyond his practice in Omaha? Do you
the
know?
80,000+ is what we pay him.
That's just Harrison County
Yeah,
and he does.
so I don't know what he does outside of that,
Okay.
you know?
Yeah, he stays in Harrison County. He doesn't work and technically he's actually, doesn't actually have his law degree. Yeah.
Well, he's a,
Wait a minute. What?
No, he doesn't actually have a degree.
I thought,
He's not an actual attorney. Yeah.
He's a clerk of court. He's, Brad Brake is a clerk of court at Lincoln, at the Capitol building for the Supreme Court.
And he gets paid from us too.
But when I read his resume, he was very braggadocious about working for the ACLU and fighting with them. That's why I really opposed him a great deal. So you have to understand, this is the highest paid man that the taxpayers of Harrison County pay. So we have to realize that who he put in as his resume, that he is employed and helps them best he can. And if you read the rest of his resume, he's with the Appalachian, which helps all the illegals get all the benefits that they can get. And he's at Fremont fighting there to get more health benefits, education benefits for the ones who are not citizens of the United States.
think about that for a moment.
And I don't think you have to be a clerk of court to be our Harrison County medical director. I don't even know what kind of degree you need, if you need any. It used to be volunteer. Dr. Deacon years ago, which Jim would know, was a volunteer advocate.
I'm gonna let you talk in just a second, Kathleen, but, let Brian, answer
Yeah.
Gary's question real quick, and then we'll get back to that.
Can everybody hear me okay without the microphone? I'm not into cutting in that department so much. I wanna see more out of it. One thing we're really seeing on the volunteer fire department side of things is we don't have medical examiners. If you have a loved one who passed away at your home, we cannot get a medical examiner out there to pronounce that person dead. So what ends up happening is our volunteer fire departments will sit at your house for 2 or 3 hours before a medical examiner will call and say, we're not coming, go ahead and transport that body to the hospital. That's not good for the loved ones who are sitting around that family. If we can get something set in stone, and here's what's gonna happen. I've been working on this with the hospital right now, seems to be in charge of it. The supervisors appoint the medical examiners, but somehow the hospital, a private company, ends up in charge of it. Nothing happens. They don't wanna get paid. They don't wanna have to clock out at their job to come out and do our job. So we already have medical people on staff. Let's use them. Why are they not our medical examiners? So I wanna take some of those people and get them certified as medical examiners. With that, I don't think somebody without any type of medical training should be in charge of that department. I think somebody with medical experience, whether they're a nurse, something other than clerk of court, needs to be in charge of that department. And I think we should take some looking into their budget on why is mental health always a shortfall in this county. We've got to focus a little more on mental health. Maybe some of those, I call them Willow Lake funds that came in, window funds, maybe we should have used some of that money towards mental health. That seemed to really hit during COVID. We had a lot of people struggle with that. So maybe some of them funds should have been funneled towards mental health. So I think we can get more out of mental health, or out of public health. I do think they do some good things. I see a lot of older folks who are able to stay in their home because they have a nurse come in with home health. So there's some good things coming out of it, but I think it can grow. It can be more than what it is.
So the 5 people, I have a question for you. The 5 people that are required, you're talking the administrative type of staff, is that correct? Is the minimum is 5?
The wording was fairly vague. It says that and this has been probably 6 weeks since I read this, but the wording and the way the law is set up What I do remember is that there must be 5 on the board, but it doesn't really delineate what the tasks of each individual would be. So whether they were administrative or 2 have to be doing this, or it didn't really say.
You were talking board, not
Right, he's talking that, make it
Yeah,
something as
yeah, maybe
5
I'll-
or,
yeah, there you go.
yeah.
Sorry about
He
that.
doesn't mean eliminate, I mean, we have home health nurses and all that stuff. Let me talk
I
to
should
you.
have clarified, that's what I meant. We don't need an unqualified person supervising the good people we have doing their job.
Of course, and that's precisely the point I'm at, where it's like, look, I do believe that the moment, there's always mission creep. So if we have a minimum of 5 on the board, and that's what we have to deal with, then they can come up with plenty of reasons to have more and more people, more pay, more money, and more ideas. So that's why I say I'm very much in favor of saying, oh no, let's shove it down as far as we can, and so long as it makes sense for the county. You certainly don't wanna cut something off that's a necessary thing, like some medical examiner, yeah, of course, certainly. But what I'm saying is that a fresh set of eyes on things will help say, well, wait a second, why are we doing this? Well, because we've always done this. Well, do we have to keep doing it that way? No. So no, we have to pay a Soros funded or the ACLU lawyer out of Omaha to come in here and tell us what pronouns are and tell us, put a mask on your face. If not, then you're a criminal. We'll just listen to him. No, we don't have to do that. So a fresh set of eyes sometimes will help you kind of look at that and go, that's where I'm at.
And like Brian said, he's not, why don't we have someone with a medical degree as our,
Yeah.
I want to ask all of you to look at this from a little different vantage point. The reason we don't is because we didn't have anybody apply for it.
Okay.
This clerk of court information is new to me. That's very interesting. I have rad break issues also, but it's more about his job performance than his qualifications. But that is what I've been told. He had the qualifications that the Board of Supervisors established for that position. And he was the only applicant who did. And that leads me to another. The reason we have the mess we have in this county is because we have not had anyone challenge the county attorney. We have had no one challenge the county auditor. So thank you to Rebecca, thank you to Nick, thank you to Brian for stepping up and putting your name in the pot. The other reason we have this problem is because we have not been going to Board of Supervisors meetings. I got involved when the assessor's office was being bullied a year and a half ago. And that leads me to question for the 2 of you and anyone else in this room who's interested in running for this position. Have you been going to Board of Supervisors meetings, and if not, why not?
I have made 0 Board of Supervisors meetings.
That's a big mistake.
That's fair. And the second part of your question is why? Is because I work a consistent job. Now, if I were to be elected, I've already made it a point where I can make that change.
I think it's important because this brings the auditor into this story again. She does the minutes for those meetings. She submits those minutes to the county publication of record. If you don't subscribe to those newspapers or live someone where they're sold, you have no access to those printed meetings. They're not on the county website because she chooses not to put them on the county website. The minutes that are submitted in print and that ultimately are on the county website are very sanitized minutes. It's a real different story to be at those meetings and watch firsthand and listen firsthand what happens. Walter, is there anybody in this room, I would be very surprised if there was, unless you're an undercover agent, that is pro Walter Uttman? No. I voted for Walter Uttman. On one person's input, on one policy that is no longer on the boards. But I'm appalled to admit that I voted for Walter Uttman. He's a bully, he's a liar, he is not a servant. He has no issue, no interest in being a public servant. He has accosted publicly former courthouse employees. He's unbelievable, and he's been let persist because he has not been challenged. So thank you for challenging him. Please don't stop challenging him. You need to educate yourself. Don't just wait for minutes to come out. That's why you guys need to be at those meetings. You need to be there.
And that brings up, thank you, Kathleen. That brings up one of the things that I want to do, if you elect me to go down to Des Moines, is Iowa does not allow for recalling elected county officials. Why? I'm not saying just go in there and if you have a gripe against somebody, a personal gripe against somebody, get a petition to get them out. That's not what I mean. There needs to be safeguards so that doesn't happen. But Iowa needs in code that if our county officials are doing something wrong, I mean, it's pretty obvious there's something wrong within our county. Other counties know it. I mean, it's pretty much known across Iowa that we have a problem in our county. We need to make it so that we can elect or we can recall elected county officials from the county level down, because we've got school board problems too. It's not just the county officials. That's another thing. And then along that line, one of the things that I have done, and Kathleen had been doing before I started doing it, was looking into the fact that why aren't the minutes printed? Iowa code says they must be printed, they must be published. It can be online or it can be in the paper, but they must be published within 7 days of the meeting. And Kathleen had looked into this before I did, and I, not knowing all that she had done, I started going to the different bureaucracies in Des Moines and saying, our auditor is not publishing these minutes. There were minutes that were coming out on the day that the meeting happened, like a public meeting that people were supposed to be able to be at. The minutes came out on March 25th, and the budget hearing was on March 25th. Well, people can't know about it if it doesn't come out till that day. By law, they have to know about that budget meeting before it happens. And I went to IPIB, and they actually sent me a letter, but they sent it to Susan that said, no, it's okay, we're not gonna do anything about this. I'm like, oh, that's helpful, thanks. And then I went to the ombudsman office, which is basically the whistleblower of our government. They have done nothing. I had to call them, I would call, they would say, can you hold please? And then 10 minutes later, they'd come back and say, oh, he's not in the office today. Wait a minute, why didn't you just tell me that before you made me wait 10 minutes? Well, I think he probably was in the office, he just didn't want to talk to me. But I have talked to them and talked to them and talked to them since our assessor quit and the deputy assessor, I've talked to them. So that's one of the things when if I go to Des Moines, if you elect me to go to Des Moines, we need to start looking into these bureaucracies, these unelected officials, and see what's going on with not just the ombudsman. I mean, there's a lot of bureaucracy, even just in Des Moines, and we need to look into it. Why are we paying so many people that are doing nothing for us? Brian?
To Kathleen's point, I recently made a meeting. I haven't made a lot, but over the years I've made several. Public Information Board is a great resource for us. A couple, 2-3 years ago, I was at a supervisor's meeting. I witnessed multiple things that they did wrong, and I reported it to the Public Information Board. The Public Information Board actually required all of the supervisors at that point to be retrained. So they had to sit through training, so they know the laws. They're still failing to follow them. Susan Bonham knows the laws. We hired a new clerk in the city of Von Damon who was learning the job. Susan Bonham called her up and quoted that same law to her. You have to have them published within 7 days. Public hearings need to be published 10 to 20 days before that meeting. No more than 20 days before the public hearing, no less than 10. So they know the laws, they just choose not to follow them.
So do you think that IPIB and these places in Des Moines, are they just picking and choosing what they want to enforce?
Maybe somewhat. Iowa code says if you get caught violating open meeting laws twice, you shall be removed from office. The word shall in Iowa code means there's no argument. Shall means that's the way it is, period. However, we have one guy that has multiple open meeting violations and is still holding that office. It's a corrupt county. We need to stop it.
So how do you enforce it?
You get people in there who will follow the law.
you go.
Yeah. Go ahead, Anthony.
I'd like to play on Nick's invitation to get to know your neighbors. The reason they keep getting away with it is because nobody's holding them accountable. They ignore me because I show up and I don't keep my mouth shut, and Rebecca follows suit. Renee King has followed suit. But if they only hear up once in a while, they just blow you off. There's people in this room that attest to that. But I'm not real easy to shut up. But what I would really, 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 really urge you to do is get outside this tribe. You have got to reach out to other people. You have got to break the little circle. There's only a few people who vote. Go find the people who don't vote, your neighbors, because they don't know. And they're not gonna know unless you tell them. They're not gonna listen. If they see Walter Ruttman's name, he's been on there that long, he must be good. Here, he verbally assaulted a tax-paying citizen of this county. And another citizen asked him at a following Board of Supervisors meeting to apologize, and he refused. It's off the charts, and it's unbelievable to me. And I'm guilty. I watched the assessor be harassed for 6 years before I opened my mouth. And she has been sought after all over this state after we lost her. She was across the board, top notch. We have no assessor.
And now we have no deputy assessor.
We have no assessor's office. We have no GIS office. And Walter Utton, and there are witnesses that have stated it, but you're not gonna see these in the Board of Supervisors minutes meetings, that he was planning and strategizing to eliminate the assessor. Why? She was always above board. She was always, no complaints from the public, the people who, she was here to serve, the same with the GIS office. Walter Ruttman and Susan Bonham had her targeted from the get-go because she would not kiss their feet or whatever else. She's just superior, and we lost her. She was phenomenal. She did her job, she did it well, she held herself to a very high standard. The same with Jeremy Butrick in the GIS office. And they helped multiple agencies. But the Board of Supervisors and Susan Bonham was determined they were going. And I'm gonna say this, and I can say this because I'm not running for office, but it is highly suspected that the Board of Supervisors took the IT professional job away from Jeremy Butrick, who was very, very, what's the word? Qualified, thank you. And gave it to someone in the auditor's office who has no qualifications, no experience, none. And I would like somebody to find out, start asking questions. I think Susan Bonham has been illegally using her courthouse computer that all of your taxes pay for. And she knew the IT professional who was very qualified. But now the person who's got it would have no clue how to find that or look for it. I know for a fact she has, but who am I?
And that brings.
You've got to talk to each other. You have got to reach out. You have got to go beyond your church. You have got to go beyond your safe community. Because we need more. We need more people in this room that have questions and have doubts.
How do we get the meeting time changed so more people can attend?
That's gonna have to be the, like these two, because I brought that up at numerous supervisor meetings, and they refused, they said no, because their excuse was that they would have to pay their clerk, Susan, overtime or whatever it is, because that's not during normal business hours, so that's why they didn't wanna do it. Go ahead, Brian. Yeah, we're paying.
To speak to Kathleen's point on the assessor's office, I served on the assessor's board for 6 years. When I started, the previous assessor was still there. The meetings would last maybe 15 minutes. When Brenda got hired, the meetings lasted 2 hours. You wanted to have supper before Brenda started. But it was a lot more thorough, you got a lot more information. For those of you that don't know what makes that board up, the supervisors, 3 supervisors have a voting body. All of the cities have mayors that have a voting body, and then the schools each appoint 1 board member that has a voting body. So there's 3 voting bodies. Tim, you may have served on it for a while as well.
supposed to, but wasn't very attentive.
Yep, so, one night before a meeting, when Brenda was freshly in, I got a phone call. It was a number I didn't know. Now I don't answer those because I don't need my car's warranty extended. But back then, I used to answer all the phone calls. It was Susan Bond. She said, well, we have a vote tomorrow, and Brenda wants a raise. And here's how I want you to vote. And I said, Susan, I've read through the agenda. I know how I'm gonna vote. I do not need anybody to call me and tell me how to vote. And after I hung up from her, she never called again. But after I hung up, I thought to myself, she calls everybody. All 3 supervisors before every meeting, it tells them how they're gonna vote. And we need people who will stand up and tell her, I'm not gonna listen to you tell me how to vote.
Is Susan Bond an elected official?
Yes.
Or is she
Yes.
hired?
Yes.
She's an elected official, and she has 2 more years. Her term won't be up until 2024, and that is exactly why I think we need code to say that we can recall county elected officials, because we have no recourse to get rid of her. And so we are stuck with her until 2024.
She actually wanted to be assessor years and years ago. And the assessor at the time told her she's not smart enough to be assessor.
And that also goes to what I've been visiting with Lynn about the elections in Iowa. That is something that needs to be changed. Iowa's doing pretty well compared to other states, but there are still a lot of flaws, and there are flaws in Harrison County especially. But we need paper ballots, and we need hand counting. And there are quite a few representatives in Des Moines that will not admit that there was fraud, and you know, they say that, oh, it was fine to certify Biden, and you know, and Iowa didn't have fraud, but some numbers that in Iowa, the numbers are all over the place, the election numbers, and that's what concerns me, especially about our county, is because she just took the IT person who hadn't been in her office. The auditor took the person that hadn't been in her office. Jeremy wasn't the IT person. The IT person is someone in the auditor's office. And when I asked about transparency and checks and balances, I was told that it was easiest to have the IT person in the auditor's office. Go ahead, Brian.
How was that meeting? So what happened was Chris Pauley's been the IT person. And that job pays an extra $10,000 and some odd dollars extra on top of her salary.
But before her, Jeremy used to do it. Jeremy for years.
No. Jeremy did it. He did it out of the kindness of his heart.
Right,
She got
right.
paid for it, and when she didn't know, she passed it on to Jeremy.
Mhm.
Now we have Solutions in here doing the IT work for the county. We're paying an outside contractor, and we're paying a county employee an extra $10,000, who basically forwards calls. So the question came up, Tony Smith asked to have it on the agenda. Why are we paying this person that much money? Should we be paying that much? And the next thing you know, they're voting to put a different person in that position. They never did cut. Jeremy spoke and said what his credentials were, why he should be in that position. They asked Steve Struble, the county engineer, what are his thoughts? Steve said, I've got an IT background. In my opinion, I think that should reside with Jeremy. Right now, we have a county server that we've bought and paid for that we don't have the username or password for. Solutions holds that. We have no access to that. We own it, we bought it, we paid for it, we have no access to it. Steve Struble, the engineer, is actually working to get that username and password. So with all of that said, and everybody's opinion pointing towards Jeremy, Susan Bonham spoke. And everybody listens.
Why do they listen?
Susan said she wants that to stay in her office because of cybersecurity with elections. Anybody with common sense, which is what we do not use right now, says that needs to be with somebody outside looking in. Let's not keep that in the office that the corruption could possibly happen at with an election. Let's put it out here with somebody else looking in. But the supervisors voted 2-1. John and Walter both voted to appoint Emily, who's a nice young lady, but does not have the credentials to have that position, to be our IT person.
The county bought and paid for the server,
Correct. You, taxpayers.
but we don't have access to it.
That's correct.
Who's paying for the licensing? The county?
You bet you are.
Then how is Solutions keeping it?
I don't know, there's one computer.
Legally, that would be.
There is one computer in the county that is not under Solutions Watchdog. Any guess? The auditors.
You know, there's been a lot of conversation about the minutes. Something equally important is the agenda that they only publish. And if you wanna know what's gonna be at the meeting, you gotta go to the courthouse, and maybe the day of, and that should be on the website where you can review that and make a decision whether you wanna be a part of it. So,
Right,
as
she
far as-
doesn't publish the agenda. You have to go to the courthouse or have someone go to the courthouse to find out what it is. Go ahead, Deb.
But Tony's putting it on the website now. I believe the agenda is listed on the website.
On the website.
Because Tony Smith is on.
Yeah, the auditor's not putting it on, Tony is. Yeah. Lynn, did you have a question?
Some of you all talk about making that different. You're all supposed to be Republicans, most of you are. But here a while back, I was talking to Wayne Barr, who's in charge of the Harrison County Republicans. And I said, why haven't we censored the 2 supervisors who broke the law? And nobody would do it, not a single one. So maybe a bunch of you guys in this room ought to start calling Wayne Barr on the phone and asking him how come the Republican Party won't censor people in their own party who break the law. Because they broke the law. When they passed that mandate, they literally went against the governor, they went against the attorney general, all of our legislators who were elected, called them on the phone and told them, don't do that. And they did it anyway. So, some of that's, sitting on you guys. If you can put some pressure on Wayne and, cause him to maybe think about that a little bit more.
Go ahead, Laura.
My question is, how are you going to combat the fact that Pat Grassley, not Chuck Grassley, Pat Grassley is basically head of the Republican Party who gets divvied out the money to whoever he wants to stay in the house? How are you can you bring Wright to that? Can you make that known?
Well, I can make that known. I can make that known right now, but they tend to frown on that when you're running. That's the bad thing is all the things that we're told we shouldn't do. We can't. I've been told that I shouldn't be saying which supervisors I endorse, which supervisor candidates I endorse. That's where I'm a bit of a rogue because I'm sorry, that is my free speech. I can say who I endorse. And that's why I'm running, is that exact reason why I'm running, is I can say who I endorse. I have free speech in America. If you're gonna shut me down, then you're gonna have to do it a different way. But yes, I can bring that to light. It's not.
Might make for a short career.
Yeah, it'll probably make for a short career because it's not pretty.
Is your plan to run your own campaign?
Yeah.
On Jacobson, or are you gonna take money from them?
Run my own campaign for what?
Run your own campaign. When you get in for re-election, then are you
Oh.
gonna run your own campaign for the next time?
Oh, yeah. Because that's what they do. What people don't realize is, the Republican Party of Iowa, they get money from legislators. So you may give your money to John Jacobson, say, he's not actually running, but let's just say, John, you gave your money to John Jacobson. Well, the Republican Party of Iowa wants you to give them a portion of the money you get. And if you do that, they'll help you. They help you. And I'm not taking money, obviously they're not endorsing me. If they were, I wouldn't be having to have a fundraiser, but they help you, and they give money to whoever they think they want to endorse, or whoever will follow the rules, or not the rules, but follow the what they want them to do. And I mean, that's just the way it is. That's why I'm having a fundraiser, because I don't have big money giving me money. I don't have RPI giving me money, but that's how it works. I don't know if any of you were here when Jim Carlin was here, but that's how it works. It's dirty down in the house. Pat Grassley, Chuck Grassley's grandson, is the Speaker of the House. And I'm probably going to hear about this tomorrow because this gentleman's taping. But I don't care. He is the Speaker of the House. He is Chuck Grassley's grandson. Tell me that doesn't affect the legislators and what they do and what they say and what they vote for. What's that?
They work for the Bidens quite well.
Yeah, they do.
And still is.
Yeah. Go ahead, Paul. Or Ron.
I'm curious, did anybody here, anybody else here go to the district convention recently in Carroll? Okay, got 3 or 4. One of the first things they did in that convention was suspend the rules, and I'm from Crawford County, by the way. I can't vote for any of these fine people, but we have some fine people in Crawford County as well. They suspended the rules and installed, and they've been doing this for a while, I think since 2016, you use little devices to vote with when you vote in a room. And so I'm thinking, with everything that's gone on in the elections, so what if we sit there for another couple hours and have a paper vote on everything that comes through that meeting? I would, out of probably 200 people there, and maybe Ron, you spoke up, but I was the only one where I was sitting that voted no on those voting devices being used. I'm thinking, all of this electronic stuff is what's getting us into trouble. So I drafted a plank for the platform about free and fair elections. And you had to have 25 signatures to get that submitted. And there was a time schedule on it. Well, I started passing it around and it got away from me. I didn't know where it was, and I was running up and down the aisles trying to find it. Well, when I finally found it, it had 36 signatures on it. But they wouldn't submit it, they wouldn't suspend the rules and allow it to be submitted. So again, it's, believe me, in that convention, the rhinos were alive and well, and in big numbers. Even though there were a lot of people, conservative people there, don't kid yourself, the rhinos were still in control of everything that was going on. And I see people like Matt. I like Matt, Matt's a nice guy. But I see him being affected by all this stuff that's going on at the top of the party. And like Kathleen said, these people are not used to being challenged on anything, okay? They just like to be elected, collect the paycheck if that applies, and leave them alone. And I think the more that people stand up and challenge them on stuff, the better it's going to get. Or, that's our only hope is for that. So I support Rebecca financially, And if I could vote for her, I would vote for her. Yeah, I can see Harrison County from my house. Unfortunately, my house is in Crawford County at the moment. So, you know, I just encourage you to support Rebecca also financially because it's important. It takes money to run a campaign. That's the way it works in America. So, and like somebody else said, talk to your neighbors. I mean, it's true, there's only a certain percentage of people that are gonna vote. And a lot of the people that don't vote would vote for those candidates that they're trying to unseat. So to think that she doesn't have a chance against Matt Winchell, I think is a pipe dream. I think she does. I think she's gonna win it. And it's gonna take people like all of you to talk to all your neighbors and friends. And I think you had an incident recently where somebody said they were gonna vote for you just because you came to their door.
Yeah.
You're the candidate.
Because I'm going door to door. I mean, people
So-
want to see your face. I mean, they want to see my face. That's one of the things that I am running on is the fact that I am involved in the community. I get my hair done in Dunlap, and I have friends in Dunlap. You know, my mom lives at Cullivan in Missouri Valley. I do a lot with the old elderly. I gotta stop calling them the old people. The seniors, I love them, and I love helping those people down there. They're awesome. The hard part is that then I lose them, you know? My people down there. I call them my people because they're kind of my people. But you know, I went to school in Logan. I go to church here in Logan. I'm involved in Mundaman. I bank in Mundaman and Missouri Valley, obviously. And you know, I am involved here. I graduated from Logan. My classmate here, and my best friend from high school. That reminds me, I want to ask you to pray for her husband. He is in the hospital. He is having to have his third valve replacement. His heart valve. He has a mechanical valve now, and it's that they would have been here. I don't know. Some of you might remember him. Scott was the one that bid $250 on my quilt. The Coalition for Freedom meeting that we had. That's my best friend's husband, and he's the one that's in the hospital, and it's going to be pretty risky. They moved it up already till tomorrow or Thursday. Otherwise they would have been here, but I would appreciate your prayers for Scott and Kim. But that's that's one of the things I'm running on. I am involved, and that's what happens. I think Matt's, as far as, you know, like Paul said, he's a good guy, you know, but what happens is when you have to go down to Des Moines for 16 years, I'm sure that when he gets home from Des Moines, he's tired, he doesn't wanna, you know, and so I just feel like I'm more attached to the community, or more involved in the community, more involved with the people, and I hope that I can stay that way. I'm gonna need prayers. I'm going to need communication with all of you, and I know this is a very small portion of the people that I would represent. And I have people down. I will have people down, you know, Underwood, the edges of Council Bluffs, and I walked the streets and edges of Council Bluffs, and there were people down there. The same thing. They're like, "You're doing your own campaign." They look at my card and they're like, "This is you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can't afford to pay people to walk." You know, and they're like, "Okay, you got my vote, you know, if you can actually come door to door." But they have it's different, you know. I'm a rural person. I live out in the country, so you know, you have to talk to those people. You have to learn what their values are and what they like, that kind of thing. Not that I'm going to change mine. Don't get me wrong. My values are going to stay the same. But as far as the other things that aren't, you know, how they live doesn't, you know, I'm not gonna change my values, but I need to know from them, you know, what they need and what they like. Like I said, it's like on the school choice bill. Maybe it doesn't affect us so much, but sometimes it affects the urban areas, and sometimes I would go down to Des Moines and I'll have to learn about these things and vote on things that don't necessarily affect the people in Harrison County, But I have to know how to vote on those things. I have to learn about them and know how the people that they do affect feel about those and you know, vote constitutionally, but yet what's best for the people.
Right, you talk about bringing your Bible here with you, you know, the poor will always be with us. We have to remember that when they talk about your charter schools and the neighborhoods. They will always be with us.
And there are some good groups down in Des Moines. It's not all negative. There's a man, his name is Paul Dykstra, and he actually is running for representative down at in Ringgold County. I really hope Paul gets in. But they have a prayer group every Tuesday morning. There's a group of men, and he's not even a representative right now, but they go to Des Moines and they read their Bibles and they pray together. Because just like somebody told me, it said, it's like there's pixie dust on the columns and down in Des Moines, and it falls off on people and they change. And they said, you know, how are you going to keep that from happening to you? And I said, well, I'm going to need your prayers. You know, I'm going to need your prayers because it's not necessarily easy, but God can guide us. God can guide me, and I can listen to Him. Deb had a question.
I was just gonna say about talking to all your friends. I checked in on the voting, and I know people here are probably Republican. But if you have friends that, because I learned that the second highest in Harrison County, independents are the next group of voters, the highest group of voters. So if you have friends that are independents, they can go to the poll that day and pick whatever ballot, Republican, of course they should pick.
Yes, they should
But
pick
they can
Republican,
pick
of course.
whatever ballot they want as an independent. And then what they have to do is they have to call back in after the election to change back to independent.
Right, so that's the
But
thing.
they can vote, yeah, definitely.
That's the thing, it's like you said, get the word out, get people, tell people you need to vote. That's what I tell people when I hand them my card and talk to them. It's like, I don't just want you to put a sign in your yard. I want you to go vote for me. And you can, on election day, you can go and you say, I want a Republican ballot, and you can vote Republican. Right?
Okay, so back in 2019, Matt voted on a bill to strict ballot access for independent voters and also the Libertarian Party to increase thresholds for signatures and also push back the timeline for independent parties and independent voters to file from August to March of the beginning of the year. So the 2018, there was like 37 libertarians who were running across the state of Iowa. In 2020, I was one of 7 libertarians running across the state of Iowa in various elections. So I ran for Iowa House District 16 down in Counts Bluffs, and
So he voted to change the date?
yeah, the date, move it from August back to March, beginning of the year, to put it in line with this when the Democrats and Republicans both have to have the paperwork in, but the only difference is the Republican Party and Democrat Party has more enough manpower to go to party county meetings.
So did you have to get yours on March 18th also?
Oh yeah, so I went door to door from between 1st Street of Missouri Valley and to 5th Street, and I got a signature from like 6th Street and 7th Street from high school friends.
So what he's saying is, the vote in Iowa, like when I got signatures, I had to have my signatures, all my signatures, and I had to turn them in by March 18th. It used to be, what he's saying is, it used to be August. You used to have till August to get on the ballot because he's a libertarian, and so libertarians can go right to the general because they don't have a primary. The reason they moved it to March 18th is because the primary is in June, and so for the Democrats and the Republicans, you have to have the signatures by March 18th.
Yeah.
What I'm assuming is trying to say is for the libertarians, they could have still waited till August to get their signatures. So you
Yeah.
had a harder time getting your signatures.
Oh yeah,
in the amount of time.
and that all libertarians, and also the Libertarian Party of Iowa is an unorganized party in the state of Iowa. So we got to be organized for 2018 election cycle, just because Gary Johnson got 2% in the presidential election. But when Jake Porter ran for governor in 2018, he didn't get that 2%, so we came in unorganized party, and we didn't get a primary in 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have a question, Jeff?
Yes, are you going to rely on Jesus and God to do everything that you do and pray for everything, decision you make?
Yes, and that's one of the things I've been telling people that, I do better always. Gary and I tend to, I shouldn't say tend to, we pray together every morning, because I still feel the family that prays together stays together. And then when I'm going into an event like this, we pray together before I go in. And there's times, because I'm notoriously like running around like a chicken with my head cut off trying to get ready, and I will, if I go in and I rush in and don't take the time to pray, I get the jitters, I'm nervous, I just need to let God, I feel like by praying, and Gary always prays, let God give Rebecca peace, let her speak your words, and I feel like then I can. I use God, I'm the vessel, God's doing the work. I just need to do what God wants me to do. And I want to, Jeff. That's my goal, is to let God lead me and guide me in everything I do. And Jim Carlin gave me this advice, because I said, Jim, I was talking to him one time, and I said, I struggle, because I always want to do this in the morning, and I want to do that, and pretty soon it's 11 o'clock, and I haven't read my Bible. And he said, I have an idea for you. Read it at night, before you go to bed, because that way, the last thoughts in your brain, before you go to bed, are the Bible. I'm not saying you shouldn't read it in the morning, but because as we all know, it's very easy to say that that's what we want to do. It's very easy to say, I know in my heart that I need to read my Bible every day. That's God's word is our guide. But then other times, it's really easy to say that, and I do really well. But then sometimes I'll get in a big hurry and off I go. I haven't read my Bible that day. We are really good. Gary's really good about, not letting me go out the door without praying first together. But yes, so that's what I want to do. That's what I aim to do. I feel like I am running because this is what God wants me to do. So I need to listen to Him. And I want your prayers. I covet your prayers, everybody's. This isn't easy. Hey, Renee, go ahead. Oh, yeah. For anybody that's interested, I won't go into the gory details of somebody springing it on me, but anyway, there is a forum next Wednesday in Missouri Valley, myself and my opponent. I did not know about it until it was announced. I wasn't even asked if I had the date free. But anyway, it is next Wednesday. It will be a question forum. I will have no idea what the questions are. There will be police presence there. You get
Maybe for me.
You get one warning if you are too outspoken. The second time, you will be escorted out of the building. You must write your questions down on a piece of paper, your name and your county you're from, because see, my district also entails part of Pot County, like I said. And so you have to write your question down with your name and your county, and it'll only take them up till 10 minutes before the forum starts. So if you want to ask a question, you gotta have it written down and give it to them. Go ahead. Well, Pot County GOP and Harrison County GOP is also, but there were only, the whole executive committee didn't get to decide that, and Missouri Valley Chamber of Commerce. It starts, the doors open at 5:30, from 5:30 to 6 is at the Rand Center. From 5:30 to 6 is just visiting, visit with people, and then it starts at 6 sharp, goes till 7, and then from 7 to 7:30 is you can talk. So if you want my campaign information, you have to get it now. I cannot have a table. I cannot put my campaign information on a table. I can't put signs out. I cannot do anything. I can wear my shirt, and that is it. People can ask me for my stuff, but if they don't ask, I can't offer it to them.
Are you sure Putin's not in charge of that?
Yeah. Go ahead, Sirla.
Is it true that applause is considered unruly behavior?
Yes. Applause is considered a disruption. Go ahead, Ron.
When we walk the door, when it's over, can we make up our First Amendment right?
Yeah. I have been told by higher up people in the Republican Party that this is the way they do it. That I am not to complain, this is the way they do it. And they said that they're saying that the police are there because unruly people are coming in, and they have to make sure that that doesn't happen, that they don't disrupt. Yeah, and the reason they are making you write the questions on a piece of paper is they don't want somebody grandstanding. So you have to write your questions on a piece of paper, but they decide which questions to get asked. Yeah, that's just the way they do it. I don't agree with it, but I've been told if I don't show up, then you're not letting the constituents, because because I do have Pot County as part of my district, then, you're not letting your constituents, you're not transparent. I will be there, if you guys.
Is the crowd limited, or is it open?
No, they haven't said the crowd's limited. So, are there any other questions? And then we also, I made a couple quilts back there. A friend made an Afghan, and then Laura donated the fertilizer. Hey Gary, do you want to grab that red, back there, the red coffee thing? We'll quick draw. Go ahead, Joan.
Piece of trivia. I worked in the courthouse in the early 70s for Lady Rife, the recorder.
Mm-hmm.
She was a Democrat. When you were in office in there, no Republican was ever elected.
Oh, wow.
You either retired or you died. And then you had, no Republicans.
There was no Republicans back when Lita Grapp was.
It's all Democrats.
Oh, wow.
Tom Harkin was a regular visitor.
Oh, wow. All right, did you draw one?
I remember Tom Harkin. Yeah.
My glasses on. All right, we're gonna do the drawing for the door prizes.